Gamar Jobit, I just want to start off by thanking the organizers of this reading for inviting me to read and allowing me to reconnect with the Republic of Georgia and the writers there. It's been 11 years since I lived in Tbilisi. I lived there for 4 years. And while I was there, I got to know many wonderful writers. Um, I was introduced to the rich tradition of Georgian poetry, and I got the privilege of being part of the translation of many poems by many Georgian authors, working with many talented translators. And I still carry those experiences, those people, those words with me today. I think my time there really helped form the way that I write and look at the world. So I'm going to start off with a poem that I wrote while I was there, and this is dedicated to Gaga Nahutrashvili, and it's called Meeting Yevtushenko's Translator. I drive the 35 kilometers into the city to meet Gaga at his house. I want to drive to wherever we are going, but he doesn't know the way. So we wave down a taxi, get in, and head out of town. I ask, where are we going? To a great poet's house, Gaga responds. What's the address? Grigol Paradze 17, he replies. That's my neighbor, the man who built my house, I say. He is a great poet, says Gaga. And it isn't long before we arrive, but not at my neighbor's house. It's my own. As my neighbor opens the gate and shows us in, whereon the hearth pork is strung on skewers, waiting for the fire to turn to embers. On the coffee table there are raw onion shoots, radishes and radish leaves, fresh tarragon and basil. We begin to graze. The wine in a crystal goblet is poured into our crystal glasses, and I feel like a rabbit or a lamb toasting away the night, crunching on the platter of greens between toasts to our dead mothers, to our departed fathers. Waiting for the raw pork to cook, sitting on the couch in my own home, separated by a city from my own car, talking to Gaga and my neighbor, who I just discovered is a translator of Yevgeny Yevtushenko and a poet in his own right. Soon, we begin eating the meat off the coals, drowning it all in a sour plum sauce as we toast more blood-red wine. In my own home where I'm eating with the poet who translates Yevtushenko, but I feel like a guest when he starts reading his own work, like he's reading the blueprints to my house, like he is building the house from scratch, the stones stacked and fitted into each other. His voice like a roof over my head, and I'm given his poems in the form of a small black book which he signs, a photo of him and Yevtushenko which he also signs, and a potsherd that he says is from a 2,000-year-old jar found in his own vineyard. And all of these pieces seem to fit into the house he builds around me, even as we run out of meat, out of greens, out of coals, out of wine, out of night and things to toast. My house seems larger, the roof rising like a sky full of noisy constellations. Right. So my next poem is called On What We Wear, a Journey. We buy the first clothing, 2 bags full and lightly worn, for 2 children still wearing their mother. Through this act, the growing arms and legs, head and torso take on a shape otherwise lost in a belly. Hats still hang in the hallway, boots line the floor belonging to a man whose body wears the earth. When I hold 2 pairs of pajamas, there are snowflake prints, bear track prints, trees, and a trail. I'm not holding clothing, but our future, the path through which a body grows. When I put on Charlie's hat, I'm not filling it up, but weighing the absence, miming the form that is no longer his. The body's journey through the tunnel of pants and shirts, through socks and blankets, hats, boots, and shoes, from a presence out of nothing to absence unbounded. right. My next poem is another one that I actually wrote, I believe, when I was in the Republic of Georgia, and my wife was expecting our first children, which were twins. So this is called The Chat. Just last night, me on the couch, he on the chair next to the fire, God and I were discussing my wife and the children she carries. I asked him if before the beginning of the world, before all this making something from nothing, if he felt different, like if the pre-creation him were somehow a different version of who he was. And I could tell the question made him uncomfortable by the way he stirred his hot chocolate, the way the dark liquid spun like the vast night sky, the marshmallows like stars circling and melting. And I waited on the couch for some type of answer, but those few awkward moments seemed an eternity, and I felt myself slipping into another version of me. Every moment my baby's growing stronger, bigger, and me slipping into the father I'll be. All right. The next poem is called Again, the Sound of Grief. I hold a fishing pole abstractly, a fisherman who never catches a fish that trawls for a reflection in the cursive contours of water that follow each other like lines in a poem. I am fishing for my mother's voice in a river, and the further I step into it, I am less myself and more Heraclitus. I know every river cradles an ocean of grief, the power of poetry I never understood before her death, the sound of water, a precise articulation of loss, the slight burble, slosh, swish, showering slap of waves, music the dead play, notes earmarked only for us who remain, played like a siren song that gives hope like a nibble on a line, played only to remind how vacant our fish-pale hearts. Right. This next one is called Bug City. I wrote it while on a trip to Prague. I think I was living in Georgia at the time, or it was right after when I was living in Ukraine. It is heavily influenced by David Robakidze's What is a Man? Anyways, it's called Bug City, and I had a little bit of Kafka on my mind when I wrote it. When you walk around a city that is not your own, a city where men are known to wake up as bugs, you feel your life is small, like a fly under the stone bridge spanning a large river. When you prepare for a bed in a city where men are known to wake up as bugs, you have to weigh in how much you love or hate your job, think how necessary your paycheck is to your family, wonder if you'll ever leave your room again. When you wake up in a city where men are known to wake up as bugs, you have to pinch yourself each morning with human hands, study yourself in a mirror to make sure you haven't changed. When you wake up in a city where men are known to wake up as bugs, you are sure to be disappointed when you don't. All right. And here's another short one called I Wish I Were a Japanese Cow. To be bred for centuries for muscle density, to be given beer that serves a purpose, creating meat, my meat, sought after by all the most refined connoisseurs of meat, the meat I marble within my body, the meat I use to move. I would be barn kept and grain fed while hand massaged to assuage the problem of sedentary living. No matter that to get to my ribeye, T-bone, or flank steak, I will have to be sliced open, as we all have to open up sometime. Flesh peeled back, hung on a spike in a cow Golgotha, sides of beef to my left and right. To know I could be singled out and needed is a need I've always had growing under my skin like muscle and fat. Right. This is my second to last poem. It's a little bit longer, and it's pretty obviously one that I wrote while I was living in Georgia, and it's called King Kali and Chains. Today, I folded the dough of a Georgian dumpling 14 times to enclose the meat spiced with onion, red and black pepper, cilantro, caraway seeds, and salt. It took 3 times to get it right. After dividing a large ball of flour and water, kneading it, flattening it with a roller, cutting out small circles of dough, forming them on a crowded balcony above an 80-year-old man chopping wood as a thunderstorm began. I watch a small fire of coals where chunks of pork are being grilled and a wood-burning stove where khinkali are boiling. And I think about the other night when, while ordering khinkali, I was misunderstood despite being fluent in restaurant Georgian. The waiter, trying to hear English, a message sent but not received, like this poem. What I really want to write about is the hike to Lomisa, a 5th century church on a mountain ridge where I lifted a chain between Georgia and South Ossetia, placing the iron collar around my neck to feel its 6-foot, 200-pound bulk forcing my head to bow. I walk around the church's sole column in the light of a single rock-slit window above the altar. And what started half in jest to me turned into a walk of prayer, my 3 circles around the stone column laboriously slow, the many icons of St. George, St. Nino, and Christ, a breeze blowing thin mountain air through one door and out the other, 10,000 wax candles melting, bending over each other, some still burning, wavering. After the 3rd circle, when the weight was lifted from me, my shoulders and neck rose as if gravity had no pull, and I understood penance just a little. The idea of grace with a chain, and I think of circles, like the 14 folds and the khinkali's dough to cradle meat. No, my life is not about misunderstanding orders, but about growing old, chopping wood, and about vats of khinkali being boiled and purified, cuts of pork being barbecued in a rainstorm, about being flattened and formed by chains forged to cradle a man, about perfect and imperfect circles. And my last poem is called Sleigh Ride with Father. As the night's ink fills our room, my tiny daughter's form grows on my chest, her fingers, claws, in the grass of my hair as I wrestle sleep and she fights the darkness, her head burrowing into my shadow, and she tears at the night's outline, tears at the moon, becomes heavier. My eyelids, 2 great anchors floating in black, and my daughter snarls, howls like her father's lair was built with stars, and all I want for her is sleep. For me is sleep, for the entire world to fall asleep, but I'm powerless. This river Lethe from which the baby drinks is lean, is hard to find in the dark, has gone dry down to her daddy's bones. The frame of this night's sled. And those are all my poems. Again, I just want to thank everyone for listening, for having me in this reading, and Nak Vam Dis from Colorado. Hope to see you soon.